Have you ever wondered why you or other people hate goal setting? Well, in today's podcast, we're going to show you why you hate it and what you can do about it. Let's do it. Your mind is a beautiful thing, but if left unattended, it can get ugly real quick. If you're not constantly curating the content your mind consumes on a daily basis, then your surroundings will dictate your daily thoughts, habits, behaviors, and actions. This show has only one goal: to leave your mind more beautiful than it was when you arrived. Welcome to the Beautiful Mind Show. Hey guys, welcome to the Beautiful Mind Show. My name is Jason Everett, and with me today is my co-host, partner in crime for Beautiful Minds, Miss Holly Fox. What's up, Holly?
Hey, not much. Jason, how are you?
Dude, it's super good to have you on. I'm doing really good, except for when I told you I was wearing this jacket because it was 53 outside, and the girl from Wisconsin said, "That's cute, Jason. That's when we put our shorts on." So anyway, no matter what the weather is, where you are in the world, I'm still wearing my jacket. That's all I'm saying. And I'm excited to be on with you guys today. Do me a favor, and if it's hot, cold, or somewhere between, type in the temperature in the chat. I want to know what the temp is, where you are, and I want to learn more about you and what's going on. So a couple of things about today's show that I think will be really helpful. We're talking about why you hate goal setting, right? If you think about this for a second, is that I think there's a lot of people out there, and Holly, would you agree with this, that there are people that they set goals and like by now, because what are we on? January 14th, right?
Oh, yeah.
We're on January 14th. We now have people who have already forgotten their New Year's resolutions. They set some goals and they've already decided they're not going to do them. I was talking with Kayla earlier, and she was like, yeah, if somebody said like, let's go to the gym, and then you want to get out of it, you've already gotten out of all your obligations. You've already let yourself down, and you're like, yep, I hate goals. They're dumb. I don't ever do them. By the way, are you a goal setting machine? Or are you a goal-setting loser? And yes, I'm using that term because I'm trying intentionally to do it. Type in loser or machine in the chat, or somewhere in between. Oh, that's pretty good. Loser, machine, or somewhere in between. Man, did you see how that just happened?
Good. It was really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like somebody said 31 with showers. Yeah, that's snow showers. That's cold. It's cold.
You know, I do think that by this point, most people have already forgotten all their goals. You know, I mean, like you're asking that earlier. I was like so easy to forget. You know, and you're like, you know, the first time somebody's like, "Hey, do you want some chocolate?" I'm like, "Hell yeah, I want some chocolate." I forgot about that.
Yeah, you're already out.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Or the other day it came up here at the office and people were like, let's go to lunch. And it was like, well, what are we going to get? And I think one of my guys was like, let's get burgers. Let's get salad. People were like, burgers. Right. Like, and it's that same thing. And it just became a joke. And I think that's what a lot of people do is they set goals. And I think, you know, Holly, we do a lot of goal setting programs like with, our Little Voice Mastery program, which is a deep dive in personal development. You're one of the trainers. I've been a trainer on that thing forever. And the idea is that we help you master the art of goal setting because it is really an art, right? Like it's not just something that you just show up and goals magically happen around you in your life. I like Misty on here, such as a loser. Misty, I'm with you. Like sometimes these goals are there. And this is what it is, right? I had a friend of mine who, Mike A, right? Mike Aguilera, right? So Mike, he has this whole thing about setting goals. He's like, you got to set a goal, and then you got to put a thing on that says like, I'm going to get a tattoo that says loser on my forehead if I don't hit my goals because you need to be motivated and you need to do all that. And I'm always like, yeah, I know. Then I'm just not going to set any goals. Like that's me sometimes, right? Is I'm like, if I know I have to cut off my arm because I didn't do it, then I'm not going to set my goal because I like to set these like crazy, lofty, ambitious goals, and I very often don't achieve them. Right? That's kind of how I set goals, Holly, is like, I love setting lofty, ambitious goals. And, you know, somebody might say that makes you a loser, Jason, because if you really knew what you were doing, you would get them done. Whatever. I'm just going to tell you how I look at it.
With you.
Yeah. And I was
there with you, Jason, on that one.
And I was on a call with one of my mentors, Blair Singer. Some of you guys know Blair. We've written a bunch of books and we were talking about something. And I said, you know, he and I were talking about goal setting because I've helped people. And just to clarify, I do reach lots of goals and I've actually been massively successful at helping people achieve their goals. So just to give you some credibility here, I'm not saying, I'm a goal setting loser. You should probably listen to me. But I have helped people hit millions of dollars. We've hit millions on millions of dollars and helped a lot of people do the same thing. But here's what I've learned about setting goals is a lot of people don't do what I call the gap process. And I want to talk about that today because I think it makes a huge difference in your ability to actually set, maintain, achieve, and get your goals. So here's what I mean by gap. And Holly, when I worked with you as a coaching client before you were part of our training team, I know I did this with you because I remember going through it. is that what we say is we say, okay, I need a good beat on where you are now. Like I need your baseline. And the idea is it's a step on the scale. And Holly, for you, when we first did it, we talked about that in your finances. We talked about all these different areas. And we said, I need to know, like hopefully all of you guys would have your butt pucker if I said, please do me a favor and send me your bank statements for all the accounts that you have. Send them over to me so I can get a real good look at your finances. Hopefully you would go like, huh? What? Because like if I looked into your bank account, this is for everybody who's on watching with me live right now, right? We just lost viewers because they're like, I don't want to talk to you about my bank statement, right? But if I ask you to send me your bank account and show me how much, cash you've amassed in your life, or you show me your financial statement, like show me your personal financial statement that shows all your investments and what you're doing and show me all that. I want to know if for the age in life that you are, how you're doing, right?
Right.
And that's the first moment is I got to find the baseline where you are right now. Then what I want to figure out is well, what's your goal? Where do you want to go? How do you want to create a future for yourself? So if you say, look, I'm making up this number. I have $100,000 in cash. I have $1 million in cash. I have $10 in cash. Okay. That's a baseline. Then how much do you want to have? And if that person who has $10 says, I want to have 50, I'm excited because that's a big gap for that person. If you have $100,000 and you want to have $500,000, that's a gap I can deal with. If you have $1 million and want to have 10 million, or you have $1 million and want to have $1 billion, that's the gap. Right. And so my job now as a coach, and your job to look at it as an individual, is to say, what's the gap? And then you just got to ask your question. How do I close the gap on that number? Because if I said to you, Holly, hey, you're a coach, and I said to you, I want to figure out a way to make $50 this week. Do you have any ideas, or could you coach me on how to do that?
Yeah. And that actually happens a lot, that people say that, like, oh, this is what I want. How can I coach to it? And the first question always is where are you starting from, where you're going? Right. And it's really to the point, is the gap. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I think one of the things that is really important that you guys get out of today's podcast, and this is really the theme of today, is the reason why you hate goal setting is you're not paying attention to the gap, right? Is that you look at the goal, you might look at where you are, but you don't pay attention to the gap. Because if I said, okay, Holly, I need 5 ways you can make $50 by the end of this week. All right, do we feel confident that there's a way to do that? And like whether it's, you go and sell something on Facebook Marketplace, or you put in some overtime, or whatever it is that you do to earn income, is there a way that you can make an extra $50? Is there a way to do that? And there's probably a ton of ways. I'm sure if you went on TikTok right now, they tell you 100 ways you can make $50 by the end of the week. You go into TJ Maxx and you buy something and you sell it on Amazon or eBay or whatever. Congratulations, you made yourself $50. There's lots of ways to make a spare $50. Or you call somebody and say, I'll come clean your house. You'll make more than $50. Like, whatever. That's labor, but you can labor for that $50. Okay. So let's say the gap is something bigger than that. Let's say, okay, Holly, my gap is I want to add $100,000 to my portfolio this year, or I want to add $1 million to my portfolio. Now we start exploring the gap. More people are going to say, I don't know how to do that. So Holly, how do you help people when they say, I don't know how, and they look at that gap and it's overwhelming?
Honestly, my favorite thing to do is have people sit down and write down 20 things that they can come up with that would bridge the gap. Like, what are 20 things that you can do now? And I've done it with coaching clients. I've done it for myself, kind of like, and just writing it down. And that really starts those wheels turning of like, oh, maybe I could try this, and oh, I could try this. And then you start to look at things a little differently, rather than just kind of going, oh, I just have a single job, or, oh, I only have one stream of revenue. And that happens a lot in the coaching world.
Yeah, I was on a call with somebody, and I think this gal, Megan Desborough, right? Megan? Yeah. And so Megan Desborough, she was on a call, and we were talking about other ways to make money. And she was like, look, I just, I can work harder. That's all I can do. And then she had this epiphany where she used to be a teacher. And she said, I had all these curriculum plans that I used to have when I was a teacher. And she said, I know there's a website you can upload your curriculum plans to, and people will pay you to download your pre-made curriculum plans. Mm-hmm. And she's like, I had never thought that I had this asset sitting around like in a drawer or wherever it is on her computer somewhere, the lesson plan, right? That she said, I could just upload that to the website. I could upload that to the website and I could actually start making money in a different way. But it wasn't, to exactly your point, Holly, on that list of 20 different ways. It wasn't until she hit like the 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 different ways that she was like, oh, geez, like that's a totally different way. Because I love that 20 comes up because I think most people could do 3. Maybe they could do 5, and then they're going to start to like run out of ideas. And when they run out of ideas, that's when your brain kicks into high gear and tries to focus on it and go even further and even faster to solve those problems. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. And I think it's funny that you even say the number like that 3 to 7, because it's like 3 to 7, everything's safe, everything's okay. But like after 10, you start going, oh, like what else could I do? It's kind of like, oh
Right. Now
yeah,
you get into like sell a kidney territory. Now you're like starting to get a little creative.
totally. Yeah, like, oh, I could try this, or oh, what about that? And then you start to be like, hey, maybe I can get a friend involved. And it's just really interesting to see when you are under that pressure of coming up with something, how different your mind moves. And
Yeah, I love what Ron said. Hey, Ron, good to see you, brother. Ron said on here, become a money architect, right? Is like exactly is you start putting plans in place so you can start placing money around you the way you want it to operate and go, okay, there's different ways for me to make money. And again, it doesn't necessarily need to be money alone on this. For talking about goal setting, it could be weight loss. It could be having better relationships. It could be saying, I want to have date nights with my wife, and I set that goal. But I think one of the things that happens when people do this is that, step one is that we talked about, Holly, is you got to say, where are you? Where do you want to go? And then figure out the gap. And the analogy I used to give on this when I was doing a lot of one-on-one coaching with people is this analogy of a GPS system. Okay. And if you guys have heard me mention GPS, do me a favor and say GPS. If you've never heard it, and this is new, type in new in the chat. If you're on with me live, if you're listening on the podcast, just shout new at me through your car speakers or wherever it is you're listening to this podcast, at your AirPods, whatever you gotta do, just yell new. This GPS idea is that when you get in the car, if you say, hey, I'm in Sacramento and I want to drive to New York, I have to know where I'm going, but I also have to know where I am. So you turn on the GPS, the very first thing it does is it says, where are you? And it like searches on satellites and uses cell phone, etc. Boom, here's where you are. And you say where you want to go in the future. I want to go to New York, and you have to get specific. I want to go to downtown Manhattan or whatever it's going to be in this specific place. And then it starts calculating the route. Well, the calculating the route is the part about setting the gap, right? It's going to say it's going to take me 2 days to drive to New York. I'm going to have to go on this many toll roads, and it's going to start a countdown timer, and it's 3,000 miles or whatever it is for me to get there. That's the gap, because once you have that gap, all of a sudden, you now say, okay, how do I close that gap, right? That's all we're doing is we're closing the gap. So if I start driving, and the GPS is really smart, if I start going towards New York, it closes the gap. If I go further away from New York, it opens the gap, and it'll say, recalculating. So the game here that I want you guys to catch is this idea around gap setting instead of goal setting will set you free. We're at a point where I got to take a break. When we come back, I'm going to show you how to break down that gap, how to make it manageable. And Holly, hopefully you'll toss out, I know you will, not hopefully, I know you will. You'll toss out some incredible ideas on how we can close the gap, get people the results they want, and re-inspire them if you set goals and already gave up on them in January to get you there. We'll be right back.
Awesome.
Would you like to have an even more beautiful mind? Well, we'd like you to have one, and we actually created a 7-day Beautiful Minds Challenge, which is a little bit of a choose your own adventure challenge for just 7 days. And I really think you can do anything for 7 days. It's definitely not easy, but it will be simple for you to get access to it. All you have to do is comment anywhere on this video or send me a message on social media that says 7-day, and I'll send you immediate access to not only our Beautiful Minds Facebook group, but also our Beautiful Minds Challenge, where you can go through 3 different areas: your mental health, your emotional health, and your physical health, and get challenges in each of those areas that'll help you get a handle on each of those areas inside your life to give you more control over what you want to do every single day. So do me a favor, comment 7-day or send me a message on any social media, and I'll make sure I give you access to our exclusive community group as well as access to the challenge. Thanks so much, and now back to the show. Welcome back to the show. You're on with Jason and Holly. We're talking about how do you set gaps, or how do you plan for gaps instead of setting goals? It might seem a little strange, but if you've been on the show and you've been watching earlier, or if you're just tuning in, that's what we're talking about. Most people give up on their goals because they don't know about the gaps, and we're going to talk about closing in the gaps. So one of the things, and again, I'll go back to this GPS analogy about setting up that gap process and knowing, okay, to get from here to New York, it's going to be 2,000 miles, going to take this much time. It's this many toll roads. You got to go into what's called a data gathering mode about your goals. So Holly, if we're going to set up some goals, I'm going to say, look, I'll give you an example. If I want to start karate classes with my sons this year and have a time for us to do it, like I can say I want to start karate classes, but step number one is I have to start the research. Right? Yeah. I have to start researching, okay, what are the karate classes in town? Do any of them let, adults and kids in at the same time? And then I got to set aside time to actually make those phone calls, because I think a lot of times, Holly, you said this right before the podcast about tasks versus goals. Can you talk to that point for a second? Because we're getting into tasks, but I think that's what people get confused about on goal setting very often.
Yeah. Well, I see a lot of times like people will say, oh, these are my goals, but they're actually small tasks that they need to accomplish in order for them to get to the goal, that it's a way on that path. And I think that that's so many times
it's like a checkpoint or something.
Yeah. Your benchmarks, basically, like this is where it is, like if you're talking about your GPS going from Sacramento to New York, there's going to be certain places along the route that you're going to hit.
Like Wisconsin. I got to go through Wisconsin.
Yeah, like Wisconsin. Yep. Get some snow, you can get your shorts on for that too. It's just so many times people just only see that end goal. They only see New York, and they don't really look at all the things that are along the way. One, that are really beautiful, that can really change the trajectory of like what you're going to see, and it's a great ride. But, they just don't even see it because they're only focused on the end goal. They're not focused on the things that are coming through the trip, if that makes sense,
Yeah, it does. I mean, I think there's a big part of it, and you got to break it down. Like, take that trip from Sacramento to New York as another example. Is you got to break it down and say, I can't drive from Sacramento to New York in one solid run. I'm going to have to stop and take some hotel breaks. I'm going to have to stop for gas. I'm going to take some bathroom breaks, some food breaks. Like, we got to start breaking it up. So once you start doing the research, so research phase is number one. That's number one of examining your gap, is start doing the research. Then the next thing is you have to get in action or get in motion, right? So it's one thing to do the research, but then you actually have to call those places, look up their website, or start going into like the movement mode to start getting in motion. So number one, research. Number two is motion. And then the third thing that you've got to do that really gets you like moving in the direction you want to do is you've got to start trialing things. You got to start, like, you're in motion, but now you got to start testing and measuring, because this is what happens, right? Is if I go, and I'll take the analogy of like starting karate class with my kids, is that if I want to go out there, I'm gonna have to try some classes. Yeah. And a lot of people get stuck in this perfectionist part of like, well, I don't want to go to one until I know it's the exact thing that I want to do. And what is the second you say that, you've stopped. And you've stopped your momentum and you've stopped moving. So if it's like, well, I want to get in better shape, but I want to find only the perfect way that I can, take, fitness classes, and the only way that's going to work for me, versus just trying some until one works for you. And it's like scrambling the code on a lock. You got to just start trying something. If you keep leaving it the same lock over and over and over again, it's not going to do any good. So you got to keep trying it and try to keep scrambling it. It may feel like it's a lock scramble while you're figuring it out. You try it. Okay. So you test, measure, you evaluate, you trial it. And then the next step in the process is you keep doing what's working. Right? Yep. Is that all of a sudden you're going to start to see some progress. Like, hey, this actually works. I like this karate class. I like that it's at the same time I like that I'm going to move it. And I would also throw out this next step in the process, Holly. You got to start doing what's working. But then you also have to be willing to throw out your perfectionism.
Yeah, that's a hard one for people, that perfectionist thing.
Yeah, well, and think about this. If you're driving in the road and you get lost and you go off course and you're like, oh, damn it, I lost myself 3 hours because I drove through Texas on accident or whatever the problem was, right? You drive off course. What you need to do is get yourself just back on course. Do what's working, let go of the perfectionism, and then move on course. So Holly, let's talk about those for a second. From, doing the research, getting in motion, using each of those steps. What's standing out for you about that process?
It's the trial and error part of it. You know, when you were
Mm.
talking about the different classes, and to me, that's where I see people get stuck. It's like, oh, I only want to try, the trial at a yoga place. Like
Yeah,
I'm a
I did it
yoga
one time.
person, so it's like this is my place. I don't want to try anything else, or it doesn't work with my schedule anymore. So now I've stopped doing it. That's, find something different. It is that trial and error that I think that's where people get stuck.
Yeah, I think the trial and error, like people don't want to try it. They want it to be guaranteed. Like people want it to be
Yeah.
guaranteed and they want it to be safe, right? Is they're like, can you, this is always my favorite. When somebody tells me a goal, like, Jason, can I work with you? And will you guarantee me that you'll make me $100,000 in 6 weeks or whatever the thing is? And I'm like, there's no way I can guarantee that because I don't know how you let yourself down or not yet. Like, let's figure that out, because I don't know who you are. Like I know anybody can make $100,000 in 6 weeks. Believe it or not, that's completely possible for every single person on this planet. And people might go, that's BS. I don't
Right.
agree. It just depends on the choices that you make over the course of the next 6 weeks will determine if you make that money.
Right.
And if you choose to sit on the couch and watch Netflix, I know what the outcome's going to be, right?
Yeah.
So I think after you let go of the perfectionism and you do it, I think there's one last step that must exist in order for you to do this. And by the way, is this good? Are you guys getting some good stuff out of this? Do me a favor and say good in the chat. I want to make sure that you guys are learning and you guys are getting some good stuff out of this. For those guys that are hanging out with us live, I'd love to know. But the last step in this process is you must be unwilling to quit. Unwilling to quit. Because here's the reality of it. If you set the goal and it's 6 weeks out, you set the goal and it's a year out, whatever it is, if you're willing to quit, you give up on the goal that you've set up for yourself. And again, like I said, maybe you need to put that, like, I'll cut off my arm if I don't achieve this goal. Maybe that's what you need. But I just think you got to have an attitude of you are unwilling to quit on your goal in order to achieve what you're after. Because sometimes, and this is my experience, sometimes if you set a goal and you don't achieve it in the time that you want, it's because you've never achieved it before. So if you've never earned $100,000, you say, I want to earn $100,000 in 6 weeks, just like Jason said. But you don't know what the habits are. You don't know what the behaviors are. You don't know what the lessons are. You don't know what the learning curve is. Because you might have one hell of a learning curve, Holly. You might make $100,000 and then have somebody sue you because you did it illegally.
Right. Yep. So it's interesting. We were talking about, having that attitude, because if you're going back to the GPS, if you want to get to New York, you're going to do whatever it takes to get to New York. I
Right,
mean,
like I have to be in New York by Tuesday.
Yeah. Yeah. So it doesn't matter, if you hit a snowstorm, if you hit, road construction, if you get a flat tire, you're going to figure out a way to get to New York. And you have, to your point, a certain amount of time. And I don't know that we always approach our goals the same way as we do like a trip and getting somewhere on that journey. Like you just do whatever it takes to get there.
Yeah. And I think that's a really good point, Holly, is like, I love there's a meme out there that says, like, am I the only one that says when the GPS says it'll take you 22 hours, you play the time to beat game? You're like, I can do it in better than 22 hours, right? Like I play that same game with your goals.
Yes.
Play that same game as a time to beat. Now, in the reality of it, especially on a long road trip, the GPS isn't factoring in bathroom stops and all that other stuff into your trip. So even though it says 22 hours, that's just 22 hours or whatever it is, 22 hours of driving. You're no matter what, when you're GPS, and this is why I want you guys to hear this. Most people set goals like that GPS from here to New York. It says 22 hours, but you would never do this, Holly. You would never start the car and say the GPS said 22 hours, so I'm gonna drive for 22 hours and then stop. And if I'm not in New York, I'm going to sit on the side of the road and cry about it and then drive back home. Right? You don't do that. You're like, I'm almost in New York. Like you've made progress. You've gotten to where you need to go. Maybe you end up in Chicago and you're like, well, I'm getting closer. Right? But then you go, well, I'm going to keep going. And so this is the thing I want you guys to catch about gap setting is that when you get partway there and your goal was not achieved in the way, and again, this is what I'm saying. If I said my goal is to get from here to New York in 22 hours and I get to Chicago, I don't want to cut my arm off. I just keep driving to New York. I want to get all the way to New York. So I keep driving. And if I look back at the end of the day and go, hey, I thought it was gonna be 22 hours and it ended up being 35 hours. That's not Sacramento to New York time, but let's just say, if it ended up being 35 hours and I still got the goal I was after, is that okay? Because the next time I go to say, now I got to drive back, right? I got to drive from New York to California Now I have a better understanding to be like, okay, my goal is to do it in 35 hours because I know that that's what it's going to take. Now I'm good at goal setting and I'm good at gap setting.
Yeah.
Because I understand the things that I didn't know previously to the road trip by being on that journey and by having the experience of being there. And the next time I plan any road trip, I now am more equipped and better tooled to handle it and to know that I have that happening. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
as we're talking about the whole road trip thing, every year my family takes a trip to Florida for road tripping. And there have been years that it took us 24 hours to get there. There have been years that it's taken us 19 hours. And every time it's a little
Nice.
different, and we make the modifications and kind of know when we're going to get there. And this year was our best year ever. And we've been doing it for 22 years. And it was the best timing, best time when we left. So to your point, I think learning as you're going and making those adjustments, and sometimes you just have to make the mistakes in the first place, then it's going to help you get better, quicker, faster, and you're going to hit those goals a lot quicker.
Yeah, super good. Super good. Well, guys, I hope today's podcast has been very, very valuable for you. And if you're having issues setting goals and you do hate setting goals, you might want to look at the gaps. You might want to look at how you're setting up yourself for success by breaking down those gaps between those goals. And if you break them down into bite-sized pieces, bite-sized chunks, and you go forward on the experience and you never quit and use all those steps I gave you, you will create a world-class goal setting experience by paying attention to the gap. Thank you so much for being on today. I hope you enjoyed today's Beautiful Minds. And if you want more help getting better equipped with that, do me a favor and comment 7-day and participate in our 7-day challenge that we help you to do. And man, oh man, it will kick your butt. If you've not done the 7-day challenge, it is a hard challenge. And it is not for everybody. It intimidates most people that do it. I took my cold shower this morning and people think I'm crazy every day because of it. But if you want to do it, comment 7-day and I'd love to have you. And also check out our free salon owner, or our free Facebook group for Beautiful Minds. And you can check it out. Thanks so much for being on today. Appreciate you guys.
Bye, guys.
See ya. Thanks, Holly. Great job.